such a pleasure to talk to you about this project. Someone who's such a fan of the series yourself. Was there a climatic moment for you? Obviously, it's a kid in a candy store kind of project with its own responsibilities.
There were so many moments that were that felt sort of like dream come true moments, but the reality is on the set, despite it being on one level dreamlike, it was also very workmanlike, meaning or work person-like, because it was days that had to get met. It was scenes that needed to be shot. It was stories that were still being figured out, lines of dialogue that were being rewritten, all the stuff that any movie deals with. So, yes, every day there was something where, you know, we felt, all of us, amazement that we were in the deserts of Abu Dhabi in a depot that was built with stormtroopers running through, and everywhere you looked it was desert, and we were in Star Wars, you know.
You were.
And it was amazing. But we also had things, shot, scenes, you know, we had to, it was always about getting the work done, but it was this weird thing where threaded through all that sort of normal pressure was the surreality of a world that meant so much to so many people.
We were so delighted to have you back in Abu Dhabi, but when I saw the film, I realized that it was also completely justified because it made it feel completely real. This is a world that you engage with completely. It doesn't feel fake in any way.
Oh, cool. Well, that was definitely a goal we had, was to, you know, try and have as much in camera as possible, which is one of the things that the original series of films did so well. By shooting, in that case, in Tunisia, with actors in costumes, in actual locations, there was no question that where you were was authentic. And that, the idea that, you know, two droids out in the middle of nowhere was as visually legitimate as anything from Lawrence of Arabia was an important component for me as to what made Star Wars, this fantasy, feel real. So that was something that we really focused on as one of our responsibilities in making this film.
Challenge succeeded.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you.
It's such a vast world, so many characters, so many things to think about. Do you have it mapped out in your head, the final vision, or does it construct itself slowly, slowly?
In this particular film?
Yeah.
Well, you know, a lot of it was conversations with you know, with Lawrence Kasdan, the co-writer of the movie, who wrote Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi, and coming up with not just where these characters that we know have come in the intervening years, but also these brand new characters. It was kind of amazing how those early conversations became scenes, became a script, became a cast and designed and shot and edited film. And it did feel oddly like this kind of evolving, living, breathing thing. It wasn't quite as much that there was this plan that happened and then it was executed. It was sort of more an evolution.
Yeah,
and
organic.
In that, it was very helpful because whether it was a design that was found, which allowed us, for example, to have Captain Phasma become an important character, or finding a way to, you know, tailor scenes to a particular actor, or figuring out what Maz Kanata, Lupita Nyong'o's character, looks like and sounds like. It was all an exploration that kind of never stopped until we finished the movie.
Yes, and now my imagination is flowing onto how much you can spin that off.
No, yeah, there's a lot.
I'll leave that to your brilliant brain.
Oh, please, please.
It's, you know, what's really amazing about this as well is that, you know, you do honor the Star Wars series. It is a sequel, but in a sense, it's a standalone film. It was kind of a dosage of both. You wanted it to be standalone and also honor the saga?
It was very much, obviously, it needs to work on its own terms, but the very first Star Wars movie that George Lucas made was Episode 4, and it dropped you into the middle of a story, and you didn't need to see the prequels to understand 4 or 5 or 6, and that's our approach on this one. You don't need to see any of the films that have come before to watch, see, follow, understand, and care about the characters in Episode 7.
Obviously, the technology helps your imagination and your vision. What is the limits of technology for you and the advantages?
Well, there are no limits to what you can do visually now. And so the question becomes, what are you going to do and why should you do it? Or how should you use the technology that exists? So in the case of something like computer graphics, obviously CG is being used everywhere to do all sorts of amazing things. Some invisible, some obvious, but in this case we thought if we could use CG not just to create the impossible, spaceships and massive sets and things that we could never build, but use it to do things like hide puppeteers, hide legs or wires or rigs, things that would allow us to use old school techniques and then use modern resources and computer graphics to allow those things to be done invisibly. So it was a fun way of saying we have basically every tool at our disposal. What's best suited for each task?
True. It was a great move and quite bold to bring relatively unknown actors as main cast for this. What qualities did you feel they had? I mean, I haven't seen it. I know that the audacity of their acting is probably what got them the role. They feel real to me.
Well, I'm glad you say that. It was the burden of being a star of this movie is you're shouldering an enormous weight. They're huge shoes to fill. It's the beginning of at least a trilogy of movies, and you need to hold your own on screen with people like Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher. So it basically required that these new actors be able to do everything. I wanted them to be unknown, partly because in the original film they were unknown, and it allowed people to discover these characters as opposed to seeing familiar faces in new roles. Of course, there are some familiar faces in the movie, but Daisy Ridley showed up and was undeniable. John Boyega was spectacular. Oscar Isaac, Lupita Nyong'o, Adam Driver, Donald Gleason. I mean, we have this cast that, to a person, exceeded expectations and just brought an incredible soul to each role.